June 7, 1944, 12,000 feet over Normandy. The morning sky is a haze of smoke and flak. Below the beaches of Omaha and Utah still burn from the day before. The sea glitters with wreckage, twisted landing craft, blackened tanks, waves turned red by the cost of liberation. Above it all, a single American fighter tears through the clouds, a hulking brute of polished metal, its nose painted with a snarling shark mouth. Lieutenant Robert Bob Johnson of the 56th Fighter Group, call sign Hell's Wrecker, grips the stick of his P-47D Thunderbolt and feels the engines rumble in his chest. "Control this is Wrecker 1, he calls into the radio. "Spotting movement on the Cannes Road. Looks like armor." "Copy, Wrecker 1, comes the reply from Duxford Control. "Permission to engage. Keep it low and fast." Johnson flips the armament switches, 850 caliber Browning M2 machine guns, each loaded with 425 rounds. He noses down throttle full forward and the aircraft dives like a meteor. The airframe vibrates as he levels out over the hedgerows. Ahead, German half-tracks crawl along a narrow lane, their crews unaware of the thunder above. "Guns hot," he mutters. He squeezes the trigger. The world explodes in fire and metal. Tracer lines rake across the convoy shells, hammering armor, splintering trees, igniting fuel drums. In 3 seconds, a column of trucks becomes a pyre. Johnson pulls up through the smoke, black soot streaking the belly of his Thunderbolt. "Splash 4, he says calmly. "That's for yesterday, boys." From the ground, the villagers of Cannes look up in awe. They've never seen an aircraft so massive, so loud, move with such violence. The P-47 Thunderbolt is no elegant fighter like the Spitfire or Mustang. It is a beast, 13,000 pounds of steel and fury, driven by a Pratt and Whitney R-2800 double Wasp, an 18-cylinder radial engine producing over 2,000 horsepower. To Allied pilots, it's affectionately the Jug. To the Germans, it's Der Panzerjäger, the tank killer. And to the Japanese, thousands of miles away in the Pacific, it's an object of ridicule, a flying oil drum, a clumsy cow. But that mockery will fade soon enough, because the Jug is about to prove that ugliness and lethality often fly hand in hand. 2 years earlier, no one believed in it. When the prototype XP-47B first rolled out in May 1941, even its own designers were skeptical. It was enormous, twice the weight of a Spitfire, heavier even than a German Messerschmitt 110 twin-engine fighter. At 33 feet long, and with wings nearly 13 feet apart, it looked more like a bomber than a single-seat fighter. Yet under its stubby nose, the R-2800 engine promised something revolutionary: raw, unrelenting power. Test pilot Gilbert H. Meyer described it best after his first flight. It climbed like an elevator with a grudge. The Army Air Corps was unsure. The world wanted nimble interceptors, not steel anvils with wings. But America was learning the next war wouldn't be about grace. It would be about endurance, firepower, and range. By 1943, the Thunderbolt was operational over Europe. The 56th Fighter Group, commanded by Hub Zemke, was among the first to master it. They called themselves Zemke's Wolfpack, and they soon discovered the Jug's brutal secret: it could take punishment that would tear any other fighter apart. During one mission over France, Bob Johnson was ambushed by a squadron of FW-190s. Cannon shells tore into his wings, shredded the fuselage, and cracked the canopy. One round hit his armor plate and deflected into the radio. His engine bled oil, his guns jammed, yet somehow, impossibly, the P-47 stayed in the air. He dove into a cloud bank, limped back to England, and belly-landed with over 200 bullet holes in the fuselage. When the crew chief opened the cockpit, Johnson simply said, "She brought me home." The ground crew stared in disbelief. The plane should have been a coffin. Instead, it was a fortress. By D-Day, the Thunderbolt had evolved from interceptor to ground attack monster. Fitted with 500-pound bombs, 5-inch rockets, and long-range drop tanks, it could deliver destruction from treetop height or tear through bomber escorts at 400 miles per hour. The Germans learned to fear its distinct growl, the deep roar of the R-2800, and the shriek of diving steel. Civilians hid when they heard it. Soldiers dropped to the ground. One Wehrmacht survivor later recalled, "When the Thunderbolt came down, you could feel it in your teeth." But perhaps the most astonishing thing about the P-47 wasn't its power, it was its heart. That massive radial engine could absorb flak bullets and fire and still run. Even if the cooling system was shot, the engine often kept turning. Its wide frame housed fuel tanks behind armor plating self-sealing against leaks, and its wings, thick and heavy, were built to withstand 8 Gs of stress. For pilots who faced anti-aircraft fire daily, it was a blessing. "You could fly home with half a wing missing," said Lieutenant Francis Gabreski, the top Thunderbolt ace of the European theater. And some of us did. Now, over Normandy, the jug proves itself again. Johnson climbs back through the clouds, his canopy streaked with smoke. "Eagle Base, this is Wrecker 1. Ground armor neutralized. Returning to patrol. Copy Wrecker 1. Watch for Luftwaffe stragglers. We've got reports of 109s near Falaise." He grins. "Roger that. Let them come." At 20,000 feet, he spots them, 3 specks slicing through the sunlight. Messerschmitt Bf 109Gs flying fast and high. He flips his Thunderbolt into a shallow climb. The jugs were never elegant in a turn, but in a dive they were unstoppable. "Zemke taught us well," Johnson whispers. "You can't outturn them, but you can outdive anything that flies." He rolls inverted nose down throttles to the stops. The airframe howls. Speed climbs past 450 mph. The 109s follow too late. At 500 mph, the Thunderbolt roars past, guns blazing. 2 of the German fighters vanish in smoke. The third pulls up too sharply and breaks apart under the G-force. 2 confirmed Johnson radios, 1 assisted. Copy Wrecker 1. Welcome to the storm. As he levels off, Johnson glances at his gauges. The R-2800 hums smoothly, oil temperature steady even after the dive. The cockpit smells of cordite and metal. He smiles. "The ugly duckling," he says to himself. "Guess we're not so ugly anymore." The P-47. Thunderbolt the plane. Japan laughed at the Germans underestimated, and its own pilots once doubted has just proven again that sometimes brute force is its own kind of grace. And before this war ends, the flying tank will leave its mark from Europe's fields to the jungles of Asia. March 1941, Farmingdale, Long Island, New York. Inside the Republic Aviation factory, the air hums with the sound of drills, rivet guns, and the metallic echo of innovation. Men in grease-stained uniforms crawl over a massive airframe suspended from steel scaffolds. Sparks fly, tools clatter. And in the center of it all stands Alexander Kartveli, the brilliant Georgian-American engineer responsible for designing what will soon become the largest single-engine fighter of the Second World War. Kartveli wipes his hands on a rag and studies the skeletal fuselage before him. Around him are blueprints so large they cover entire tables and diagrams labeled in heavy pencil XP-47B revised wing spar geometry. His assistant, Karl Roch, approaches with a clipboard. "Alex, the Army still says it's too heavy. They want us to shave off another 1,000 pounds. Kartveli looks up sharply. "Tell them to shave it from the sky, not the plane," he growls in his thick accent. "If they want altitude, armor range, and firepower, they cannot have feathers." Rach nods. He's used to this kind of talk. Because in 1941, Republic Aviation is fighting 2 wars, one against the Axis and one against expectations. The U.S. Army Air Corps had wanted a lightweight interceptor, something like the British Spitfire or German Bf-19. Fast climbing, quick turning, slim. But Kartveli's vision is different. He believes in survivability. The next war, he insists, will not be won by agility alone. It will be won by engines that can't quit and aircraft that can take a beating and come home. At the heart of his design sits the Pratt & Whitney R2800 Double Wasp, an 18-cylinder radial masterpiece, 2,000 horsepower of growling fury. It's the same engine that will later power the F-6F Hellcat and the F-4U Corsair. To fit it into the airframe, Republic engineers must build a nose section the size of a small car. The rest of the design grows around it, a bubble canopy for visibility, thick wings to house 8 50 caliber Brownings, and a massive fuselage that doubles as an armored shell. When the prototype XP-47B rolls onto the tarmac for the first time, even the test crew laughs. It's a flying milk bottle, one mechanic jokes. You sure it's not supposed to tow bombers instead of fly like one? Kartveli only smiles. Just wait. May 6, 1941. Test pilot Lowell Bales straps in the canopy, clattering shut behind him. The sun gleams off the polished aluminum fuselage, its skin reflecting the hangars and factory workers who have gathered to watch. The R2800 engine starts with a deep, chest-shaking rumble that makes nearby windows vibrate. Bales checks his gauges, throttles up, and the XP-47B rolls forward, its landing gear creaking under the weight. It's nearly twice as heavy as any fighter in U.S. service, over 7 tons. Feels like I'm driving a train, Bales mutters into his mask. He pulls back on the stick. The aircraft lumbers, hesitates, then climbs. The climb rate stuns everyone over 2,500 feet per minute. The jug doesn't dance, but it surges skyward with authority. At 20,000 feet, Bales opens the throttle. The plane hits 400 mph. For a machine this size, that's a revelation. When he lands, Kartveli is waiting, so he asks. Bales grins. She's ugly as sin, but she's got power like the devil himself. Kartveli just nods. Good. She'll need it. As production ramps up, Republic's factory in Farmingdale runs day and night. By 1942, America is at war, and the demand for fighters skyrockets. Thousands of men and women flood into the plant, riveters, welders, painters, inspectors. Posters on the walls read, "Build Thunderbolts, bring our boys home alive." Each aircraft takes 30,000 rivets, 10 miles of wiring, and 8,000 labor hours. The R2800 arrives from Pratt & Whitney's plant in Connecticut, already a legend in the making. Workers lower it onto the fuselage with chain hoists, bolting it to the airframe like a heart being transplanted. When the first production model, the P-47B, is delivered to the Army, the pilots of the 56th Fighter Group can hardly believe their eyes. The thing towers over their old P-40 Warhawks. Lieutenant Hub Zemke, a tall, sharp-eyed commander from Montana, walks around one and whistles. "She's built like a grain silo," he says. "But if she flies, I'll fly her." And fly her he does. The 56th Fighter Group trains out of Bridgeport and Farmingdale, then transfers to England in early 1943. Their mission: protect American bombers over occupied Europe. At first the pilots complain. The Thunderbolt guzzles fuel, feels sluggish in tight turns, and climbs slowly compared to Spitfires. But the first time they return from a sortie riddled with holes, and still in one piece, the skepticism starts to fade. They begin to call it the Jug, short for Juggernaut, and because its rounded fuselage looks like a milk jug from the front. The name sticks. Zemke, ever the tactician, sees the Thunderbolt's true advantage: energy fighting. You don't dogfight a 190, he tells his men. You dive, you boom and you zoom. Hit hard, hit fast, and climb out before they even know what happened. The P-47's massive engine and weight make it unstoppable in a dive. Luftwaffe pilots soon discover that chasing one down is suicide. At high speed, the 109's control surfaces lock up, but the Thunderbolts remain firm. One German ace, Heinz Baer, later admits, "If a Thunderbolt dives, leave it. You will not catch it, and if you try, you will die." By summer 1943, the Jug is earning its reputation as a killer. In the skies over Schweinfurt and Regensburg, P-47s escort bombers deep into Germany, shredding interceptors with blistering bursts of gunfire. Pilots return covered in sweat oil and cordite and stories. "Zemke got 2 109s and came home with half a tail," says one crewman in the mess hall. His elevator was shot through like Swiss cheese. But the Jug didn't care. They laugh exhausted but alive. Because that's what the Thunderbolt does best, it brings you home. The Army Air Forces take notice. Production soars. New variants appear: the P-47C with a longer range, the P-47D Razorback, and eventually the Bubble Top with a clear canopy offering 360-degree visibility. By the end of 1943, the skies over Europe thunder with the sound of R-2800s. And as the Allies prepare for the invasion of France, the flying tank will prove that survivability and firepower can win wars just as surely as speed and grace. The era of the heavy fighter has arrived, and the world is about to learn why the Jug is no joke. October 8, 1943, 25,000 feet over Bremen, Germany. The sky is a boiling cauldron of contrails and fire. Below, black bursts of flak bloom like malignant flowers around the lumbering formations of B-17 flying fortresses. Above them, slicing through the frozen air, dive the FW-190s and Bf-109s of Jagdgeschwader 26, Germany's veteran defense wing. Eagle control to Wolfpack bandits at Angels 25 bearing 090. The radio crackles in the ears of Colonel Hubert Hub Zemke. Zemke scans the sky through his canopy. He's at the head of 16 Thunderbolts, their broad wings gleaming silver against the sun. His oxygen mask fogs with every breath. Wolfpack tighten it up. They'll hit the bombers in 30 seconds. From the bomber boxes below comes the cry of "Bandits, bandits." "Let's give 'em hell," Zemke growls, rolling his massive P-47C Thunderbolt into a dive. The formation follows, engines roaring. The Germans spot them too late. 8 Jugs scream out of the sun guns already blazing. Each Thunderbolt carries 8 50 caliber Brownings capable of spitting out a combined 100 rounds per second. The first burst shreds an FW-190 in half. Flaming debris spirals through the bomber stream. "Scratch one, Butcher Bird," shouts Lieutenant Bob Johnson, pulling up through the contrails. "2 more on your 6, warns his wingman, Lieutenant Bill Dunham. Johnson rolls the Jug hard right. The Thunderbolt isn't graceful, but its roll rate is superb. The 109s overshoot. Johnson yaws and lets loose a 2-second burst. The German explodes in mid-air. "Confirm 1 more," Zemke radios coolly. "Keep them off the forts, boys." For 10 minutes, the sky becomes a blur of tracers, vapor trails, and fire. By the time the Germans disengage, 8 enemy fighters are down. The Wolfpack loses none. After the mission back at Halesworth Airfield in Suffolk, the pilots gather around the map room, faces blackened with oil and sweat. Zemke debriefs them quietly, the smell of burned fuel still clinging to their flight suits. "Gentlemen," he says, tapping the map with a pencil, "today, the Luftwaffe learned something new. We're not flying targets anymore." Laughter breaks the tension. The Jug has proven itself beyond doubt. But even in victory, challenges remain. The Thunderbolt's biggest weakness is its range. With external drop tanks, it can escort bombers to Western Germany, but no farther. The heart of the Reich, places like Leipzig, Schweinfurt, and Berlin remain out of reach. Many bomber crews curse the short-legged Jugs for having to turn back halfway home. When the Luftwaffe attacks on the return leg, the B-17s are left alone. Zemke knows it too. He petitions for better fuel management, longer-range tanks, and navigation aids. He even begins experimenting with relay escort tactics, where one group of Thunderbolts hands off coverage to another mid-route. Still, he knows that to win, they must not only defend, they must dominate. Through late 1943, the Wolfpack racks up kills at a staggering rate. Pilots like Francis Gabby Gabreski, Bob Johnson, and Dave Schilling become legends. They learn to use the Thunderbolt's strengths, its dive speed, durability, and firepower to deadly effect. Gabreski, often described as a gentleman, until the fight begins, develops a signature maneuver, a shallow dive from altitude, throttling up the R-2800 to full power. Once the airspeed hits 450 mph, he levels out fires and climbs away. "It's not finesse," he says in an interview. "It's controlled fury." December 1943, over Emden Johnson and his flight encounter a wall of flak while escorting bombers. His Thunderbolt takes hits across the wings. Hydraulic fluid sprays into the cockpit, but the jug keeps flying. "Oil pressure's gone," his wingman calls. "Yeah," Johnson replies, but the engine hasn't read the memo. He limps the crippled fighter 200 miles back to England, landing with a flat tire and no flaps. Mechanics count 21 holes in the fuselage, one in the propeller, and a cannon shell lodged behind the armor plate. "You could land a house on this thing," Johnson mutters, climbing down. Word spreads quickly. The men trust the jug with their lives, and they start flying like it. In early 1944, General Dwight Eisenhower calls Zemke's group to briefing. The Allied invasion of France is on the horizon. Their new mission to cripple German transport fuel and communication lines before D-Day. Eisenhower's orders are blunt: break their back. Leave nothing that moves. Zemke salutes. "Sir, the Wolfpack's been hungry for a bigger hunt, and hunt they will." The Thunderbolts begin low-altitude strafing missions across northern France and Belgium. Trains, convoys, depots, nothing is safe. The 8 Brownings cut through steel like paper. Pilots return with rail cars still burning on their gun cameras. One pilot jokes, "I don't know what's louder, the guns or my grin when they hit." By March, the Luftwaffe's strength is collapsing. Fuel shortages, pilot losses, and relentless P-47 strikes take their toll. German ace Johannes Steinhoff later admits, "It was not the P-51 Mustang that broke our will. It was the Thunderbolt. The Mustang hunted us in the air. The Thunderbolt destroyed our world on the ground." The jug's reputation now echoes across Europe. Soldiers call it the flying tank. Mechanics call it the beast that never dies. But far away across the Pacific, another war is raging, one of jungle's islands, and skies dominated by nimble Japanese Zeros. And soon, the same lumbering machine that crushed the Luftwaffe will prove just as unstoppable against the Emperor's finest. April 7, 1944. Indo-Burma border, 15,000 feet. The monsoon clouds hang heavy over the jungle. The air is a blur of rain and gunfire. A formation of Republic P-47D Thunderbolts from the 80th Fighter Group. The Burma Banshees roars through the storm, their white skull insignia glaring from the cowlings. In the lead, Captain John Jack England wipes condensation from his canopy. His goggles are fogged, his shirt soaked with sweat despite the chill of altitude. Beneath him lies a green ocean of forest, broken by flashes of sunlight on rivers, and somewhere down there, Japanese convoys moving supplies along the Mandalay Road. Banshee lead to control, he radios. "We've got movement on the track near Kalewa. Looks like a truck column, maybe 20 vehicles." "Roger, Banshee lead. You're clear to engage. Keep your eyes open for Oscars." Jack smiles. "Wouldn't dream of it." He flicks the armament switch to guns hot and banks left. The formation fans out like hawks over prey. When the Thunderbolts dive, the jungle shatters with noise. 8 50 cal Brownings from each fighter turn the road into a storm of fire and metal. Trucks erupt in flames, ammunition cooks off, and Japanese soldiers scatter for cover. From the tree-lined tracer fire claws back light machine guns and a few 20mm cannons. The jug crews barely notice. Armor plating under their seats shrugs off the rounds. "Pull up, Banshee 2," England shouts as one pilot stays low too long. A burst clips the canopy glass, flying, but the pilot yanks back his P-47, climbing with smoke trailing from the wingtip. "Still with us," he pants over the radio. "Just lost a bit of paint. Copy that. Let's circle and finish the job." Then they arrive, silver streaks darting out of the clouds. Nakajima Ki-43 Oscar fighters, fast and graceful, diving to intercept. Their cannons flash. The air fills with tracer lines. Bandits, 3 o'clock high. The jugs pull up hard. In the chaos, one Japanese pilot, a veteran of Rangoon, lines up on England's tail. The Oscar's 20mm shells rake the Thunderbolt's fuselage, shredding control cables and punching holes through the wing. But England doesn't bail. Instead, he slams the throttle forward. The R-2800 roars like a beast unleashed. The Thunderbolt surges ahead too fast for the Oscar to follow. The Japanese pilot tries to match the dive but feels his wings tremble. Then tear away. The Oscar disintegrates in mid-air. England pulls out low, barely clearing the trees, engines screaming. "That's why they call her the flying tank," he mutters, leveling out. The Japanese had mocked the P-47 at first sight. Reports from Rangoon and Singapore described it as a fat, ungraceful monster. They changed their tune quickly. Unlike the Zero or Oscar, which traded protection for agility, the Thunderbolt could take punishment. Its radial engine, encased in armor, rarely caught fire. Its heavy structure let it dive at speeds above 500 mph, nearly 200 faster than the Japanese fighters dared. One captured Japanese officer admitted later, "We shot at them until our guns burned and still they climbed. We began to think they were made of iron." By mid-1944, the P-47 had replaced most of the worn-out P-40s and Hurricanes in the India-Burma theater. Flying from rough airstrips at Chittagong and Imphal, the jugs supported British and Chinese ground forces. Their missions were brutal. Long sorties over jungle heat and monsoon storms. Bomb runs through lightning. Strafing columns under flak. Many pilots never came back, but those who did swore no other plane could have survived it. Major Neil Kirby described it best before his final mission: "You fly the jug into hell, and it brings you out again, if you treat her right." In May 1944, the Burma Banshees attacked the Japanese airfield at Mietkina. 2 squadrons of Thunderbolts roared in low. Guns blazing, rockets streaking ahead. Hangars exploded, aircraft burned on the ground. As they turned to leave, a dozen Oscars rose to intercept. The ensuing dogfight became legend. The jugs dove, climbed, rolled, and fired with unrelenting fury. When it ended, the sky was empty except for the Thunderbolts. 10 Japanese fighters destroyed. 1 jug lost. The returning pilots were met with stunned silence on the tarmac. Their commanding officer, Colonel Thomas Lynch, simply said, "Gentlemen, we've just buried the myth of the Zero." The Thunderbolt's success wasn't only about strength, it was logistics. Its rugged construction let it operate from dirt strips carved out of jungles. Ground crews loved it. Its radial engine could be patched with scrap metal and still fly. Spare parts came by the crate, shipped in from India or the States. Pilots often joked that you could build a new jug from the wreckage of 3 old ones. And when the Pacific's geography demanded range, Republic responded. The P-47N, introduced in late 1944, had larger wings with integral fuel tanks stretching its reach to over 2,000 miles. Enough to escort B-29s from Saipan and Guam deep into Japanese territory. The flying tank had learned to fly long and hit harder. By the summer of 1945, Thunderbolts thundered over the Pacific Islands, diving on airfields, ships, and rail yards. At Iwo Jima, they strafed caves and bunkers in support of Marines. In the Philippines, they tore apart Japanese convoys with rockets and napalm. Japanese pilots, once arrogant, now fled at the sight of the P-47's massive silhouette. A surviving ace, Saburo Sakai, would later remark in his memoir, "We could turn circles around them, but they would not die. They came out of dives faster than our bullets and climbed like eagles." Against such machines, courage was not enough. For the Americans flying them, the jug became a brother, ugly, loud, but immortal. They'd return from missions with oil pouring from the cowling flaps, shredded, even cylinders shot away, and still land safely. Lieutenant Edwin Buzz Bristow once brought his home from a 200-mile flight, with one wing riddled and the other nearly gone. "Any other plane," he told the ground crew, "would have buried me in Burma." The crew chief grinned. "Yeah, but she's not any other plane." By war's end, the Japanese didn't laugh anymore. The flying tank had smashed convoys in Burma and guarded bombers over Tokyo. It outlasted the Empire's most agile killers, and in doing so, it proved a new truth about air power. That victory belonged not to the prettiest plane, but the toughest. The Thunderbolt had roared across continents and defied mockery. And its next chapter, from the beaches of Normandy to the thunderclouds over Germany, would show it was both sword and shield. February 20th, 1944. 27,000 feet above central Germany. It's minus 40 degrees outside. Frost creeps along the canopy edges like white fire. 1,000 American bombers crawl eastward in tight formations, their silver skins gleaming in the morning sun. Below them, the shadows of the Reich stretch long rail yards, airfields, factories, and waiting in the haze ahead, Jagdgeschwader 11. At their flanks fly the Republic P-47 Thunderbolts of the 56th Fighter Group, Zemke's Wolfpack. Colonel Hub Zemke peers through his gun sight. "Wolfpack, keep your altitude staggered. Don't let the 190s climb under us." Copy, Wolf leader replies, Lieutenant Francis Gabby Gabreski. "They're coming in from 12 o'clock low." Zemke squints. A swarm of German fighters rises from the haze, sunlight flashing off yellow noses. "All right, boys," he says. "Let's go earn our pay." He rolls his Thunderbolt onto its back and dives. The Thunderbolt screams downward like a falling anvil. The airspeed needle trembles past 480 mph. Zemke feels the G-forces hammer his chest as the heavy fighter dives straight into the enemy. The 850 cal Brownings hammer to life. A Bf-109 fills his sight one burst and it disintegrates in flames. Gabreski rolls inverted behind an FW-190 firing in 2-second bursts. His tracers rip across the fuselage. The German bails out too late. Splash 1 Gabreski radios. "God, these jugs dive like bricks with wings." "That's the point," Zemke replies. The fight becomes chaos. The Thunderbolts streak in and out of the bomber stream, climbing and diving like armored predators. Their advantage isn't elegance, it's speed and endurance. While Spitfires twist and Mustangs slice the jug powers through everything. From the B-17s below, gunners watch in awe. "Those jugs just don't break one tail," Gunner shouts as a Thunderbolt takes 2 cannon hits and keeps climbing. He's on fire, no wait. He's still shooting. The jug's survivability is legendary, its radial R-2800 engine shrugging off damage. Bullets punch through the cowling and vanish without leaks. Armor plating turns near misses into scars instead of tombstones. Back at base, mechanics count bullet holes like medals. Pilots call it flying a tank with wings, but no one complains. As 1944 unfolds, Operation Argument Big Week begins. The Allied goal: cripple the Luftwaffe's aircraft industry and lure its fighters. For 6 days, bombers hammer targets across Germany, and every day the Thunderbolts are there roaring alongside, shielding the formations. On February 22nd, Gabreski scores 3 kills in one sortie, diving through flak and tracer fire to save the 91st Bomb Group. He returns with oil streaming down the canopy, his engine coughing. When he lands, the crew chief shakes his head. "Sir, that engine's done for." Gabreski grins, then bolt in another. "I'm flying again tomorrow." The Luftwaffe begins to fear the jug. Their pilots complain hits to the fuselage and engine have no effect. It does not burn. It dives faster than any of our fighters and climbs away with alarming power. And the jug's reach is growing with new drop tanks. By spring, Thunderbolts are escorting bombers to Berlin itself. April 8, 1944. North of the German capital. The mission strike the aircraft works at Oranienburg. Flak fills the sky. Zemke, stay tight, keep the bombers covered. No chasing glory today. But Gabreski can't resist. He spots FW-190s climbing below. "Wolf 2, I've got bandits climbing under Angels 2-2. Go get 'em," Zemke replies. Gabreski dives. The air screams past the canopy. He fires one 190, explodes, another spins out, trailing smoke. His wingman shouts, "2 down." "Gabby Roger," Gabreski says. "Let's go find more." By day's end, 9 kills, no losses. Other groups adopt Zemke's tactics, killer teams flying in pairs using altitude and dive speed to dominate combat. By May, air superiority over Western Europe is owned, yet the Jug's mission is far from over. As D-Day approaches, the heavy fighter finds its true calling: ground attack. Low-level strafing train busting tank hunting. The P-47's 8 Brownings fire nearly 7,000 rounds per minute, combined shredding trucks and locomotives like tin toys. Zemke's pilots call it the greatest artillery piece ever put in the sky. And once the invasion begins, they will prove it one sortie at a time. But before Normandy, the Wolfpack must fly one more mission. A mission so deep, so daring that even the Jug's indestructibility will be tested to the limit. May 29th, 1944, 28,000 feet over central Germany. The contrails of B-17 flying fortresses stretch across the sky like white scars. Below them, the heart of the Reich beats Berlin. Flak bursts fill the air in thick black clusters, shaking the formation. Amid the chaos, 30 P-47 Thunderbolts of Zemke's Wolfpack slice through the haze, sunlight glinting off their aluminum skins. Colonel Hub Zemke checks his instruments, the needle of his altimeter quivering near the ceiling of the Jug's performance. Wolf leader to all flights: maintain altitude. Bombers are on final approach. Copy. Wolf leader replies, Captain Dave Schilling. No sign of bandits yet. They're out there, Zemke mutters. They always are. Then the radio erupts. Wolf 3 to leader tally ho. Dozens of 190s high 12 closing fast. Zemke's eyes snap up. Black specks diving from the sun, Jagdgeschwader 26 and JG-11 elite Luftwaffe squadrons defending Berlin. He presses the throttle forward. Wolfpack engage. The sky explodes. Thunderbolts dive from altitude wings, shuddering under strain. The R-2800 engines roar like storms, tearing through the stratosphere. Zemke's guns blaze first 8 streams of tracer fire crossing into the path of the oncoming 190s. One bursts into flame instantly. Splash 1, he calls. Schilling banks left. A Messerschmitt streaks past him, guns blazing. Schilling rolls inverted and fires. The 109 disintegrates into a cloud of smoke. 2 down, more coming in. From the bomber formation below, gunners cheer. Those Jugs are tearing them apart, but the Germans aren't done. They come in waves. The Thunderbolts climb, roll, and dive their weight, turning inertia into a weapon. In steep dives, they reach speeds exceeding 520 mph. Luftwaffe ace Heinz Knock records in his diary that day, "The American Thunderbolt is like a hammer thrown from the clouds. You hear nothing until it strikes." Midway through the battle, Lieutenant Paul Conger finds himself alone. His wingman is gone. His plane shakes violently, riddled with cannon fire. Oil spatters across his windscreen. Wolf 9 to control, I'm hit bad. Static answers him. His radio is damaged. Smoke fills the cockpit. The oil pressure gauge is dead temperature, needle-pinned red. But the R-2800 still growls. "Come on, old girl," he mutters. "Don't die on me now." Conger dives out of the fight, leveling at 8,000 feet. A 190 appears on his tail cannons, flashing. He jukes hard, left rolls, and dives. Then he cuts throttle, waits 2 seconds, then yanks up hard. The German overshoots. Conger fires the 190, explodes mid-air. Fragments slam against his wing. "That's for my wingman," he says quietly. Somehow his Jug keeps flying. The fight rages for 40 minutes. The sky above Berlin becomes a twisted ballet of fire and contrails. When the last German fighters break away, the Thunderbolts reform, wings riddled, paint scorched, but still airborne. Zemke surveys the damage. All flights report status. Wolf 2-2 kills, no hits. Wolf 3, 1 confirmed. Wolf 9 leaking oil but alive. Copy. Wolfpack. Head for home. Behind them, Berlin burns. At Halesworth Airfield, the Wolfpack returns at dusk. Mechanics rush to the line, staring at the condition of the planes. One Jug has a 3-foot section of wing missing. Another's tail is stitched with holes. How the hell did they stay up? They didn't fly, Zemke answers. They fought. In the debrief, 17 enemy aircraft destroyed, 4 probable, none lost. Gentleman Zemke says the Luftwaffe's back is broken, and he's right. It marks one of the last great air battles over Germany. The Luftwaffe's veterans are dead or captured, their replacements barely trained. The Reich's airfields lie in ruins. The war in the sky is no longer a duel, it's a rout. But the Thunderbolt's work is far from done. In weeks, Allied armies will land in France, and the Thunderbolt, once mocked as too heavy, too slow, will become the spearhead. No longer the high-altitude escort. No longer the lumbering flying tank. Now it will be something else entirely. The fist of the ground war. And in that new role, flying low through flak smoke and chaos, the Jug will earn its place in history. Not just as a killer of fighters, but as the savior of soldiers. June 10, 1944. Normandy, France. The air smells of gunpowder and diesel. The beaches are choked with landing craft and wrecked tanks. Overhead, the roar of engines never stops, a metallic storm that shakes the sky from dawn to dusk. At 8,000 feet, Major Dave Schilling leads a squadron of P-47D Thunderbolts from the 56th Fighter Group call sign, Razor Red. Below them, the Allied front snakes across the hedgerows of Normandy, where American infantry battle entrenched German positions. Control, this is Razor Leader Schilling radios. We've got armor sighted west of Carentan, requesting clearance for close support run. Razor Leader, you are cleared hot, comes the reply. Friendlies are 2 miles south, watch your fire. Schilling toggles the arming switches. His Thunderbolt bristles with ordnance bombs, rockets, and 8 Browning 50 cals. He grins under his oxygen mask. All right, boys. Let's give the army their money's worth. He rolls over and dives. The P-47s plummet from the clouds. At 400 mph, the hedgerows rush up like a wall of green knives. Schilling steadies his hand, the gun sight dancing over a column of German Panzer IVs. He squeezes the trigger. The guns erupt with a deafening roar, tracers cutting through smoke. The bombs release and the world below explodes in flame. Direct hit, yells his wingman. The formation splits, each pilot diving into strafing runs, raking convoys and blasting supply trucks. The R-2800 engines echo across the countryside, the wham, wham, wham of Thunderbolts strafing through the hedgerows. To the men on the ground, it's salvation. At a field near Sainte-Mère-Église, Private Hank Delaney of the 101st Airborne crouches behind a hedgerow as mortar rounds fall. Then a shadow passes overhead, a P-47 streaking low wings glinting. Get down, someone shouts. The Jug roars past, guns blazing. A line of fire sweeps across the German position, detonating ammunition and silencing mortars. Delaney looks up just in time to see the plane's tail flash past a red nose white star. That's one of ours, he yells. The sergeant grins. Hell yes, that's a Jug. The soldiers call the Thunderbolt the angel with the big guns. It's the most reliable close air support aircraft of the war, fast, tough, and deadly enough to break armored attacks single-handedly. In the first 2 weeks after D-Day, Thunderbolts fly over 8,000 sorties, destroying hundreds of tanks, locomotives, and trucks. One Wehrmacht officer later writes, "It was not the tanks that beat us in France. It was the planes that hunted us like wolves. Gone are the high-altitude duels. Now it's a low, brutal grind, flying barely above treetops through dust and smoke." Major Schilling compares it to flying a furnace. The heat rises through the cockpit. The smell of burning fuel seeps through the vents. Pilots finish drenched in sweat, their faces blackened with oil and gunpowder, but they endure it because the Army needs them. June 12, 1944. Thunderbolts from the 362nd respond to a call from American armor near Villers-Bocage. German Tigers ambush the column. Within minutes, 4 P-47s arrive. Razor blue flight target is those big bastards near the church, comes the radio call. The Jugs dive almost vertically. Rockets streak down, striking the Tigers square on their engine decks. Explosions follow. 2 tanks erupt in fire. A third belches smoke. On the ground, an American tanker watches. Whoever's flying those, he says, I owe him whiskey. By July, as the Allies push toward St. Lo, the Thunderbolts rule the skies. The Germans call it the Jabos Hour. Every convoy movement by day risks death from above. P-47s loiter over the front lines like vultures guided by forward controllers. A single squadron might destroy 50 vehicles in one afternoon. Pilots count locomotives as trophies instead of dogfight kills. Shilling jokes, I used to chase fighters, now I chase trains. But the work takes its toll. Flak damage is constant. Lieutenant Jack Christensen survives 3 crash landings in a week. On the third, his jug slides through a hedgerow canopy shattered. He crawls out, lights a cigarette, and waves down a jeep. "Guess she's tired," he says. "Can I get another?" The driver laughs. "Buddy, they're stamping them out by the hour. Republic Aviation is producing 1 P-47 every 90 minutes. By late July, the Luftwaffe over Normandy is a ghost. Thunderbolts, Typhoons, and Mustangs own the air. But it's the P-47 the soldiers remember, the one they can recognize by sound alone. That deep hammering engine note means safety. A correspondent writes, "When the Thunderbolts come in low, the men stop firing. They just watch. The battle's about to turn." As August dawns, the Allies begin Operation Cobra, the breakout from Normandy. The Thunderbolts lead the assault. They dive through smoke to pound German armor trapped near St. Lo. Thousands of vehicles lie in smoking heaps. The P-47s have fired nearly 5 million rounds and dropped over 3,000 tons of bombs. The Army calls them the Flying Artillery, and soon that artillery will follow the armies all the way to Germany, through autumn skies, frozen forests, and finally to victory. December 24th, 1944, Bastogne, Belgium. Snow drifts through the gray morning sky, covering the shattered town in white. In the woods beyond, German armor grinds forward through the trees. The Battle of the Bulge is in full fury. Inside a frigid command post, an officer radios desperately, "This is Bastogne. We need air cover now. Tanks in the open." The answer crackles back, "Roger, Bastogne. Weather's breaking. Jugs are on their way." 10,000 feet above the clouds, the sun bursts through. The world below is fog, but above it, the sky is crystal blue. Flying in formation are 12 P-47D Thunderbolts from the 362nd Fighter Group call sign, Devil Flight. Leading them is Major Edwin Heller, face frostbitten eyes, bloodshot from days of constant sorties. "Santa's coming to town," he says. "Devil 1 to ground control," Heller calls. "We've got a break in the weather at Angels 8. Give us your coordinates." "Grid 247, enemy armor in the open, moving south." "Copy that," Heller says. Time to go to work. He pushes the stick forward, and the Thunderbolts dive into the clouds. The jugs burst out of the fog at treetop-level snow whipping past. Below, German Panzer IVs and Tiger tanks crawl along a frozen road. Devil Flight guns hot. 850 cal Browning's thunder. Tracers streak down, a Tiger erupts, its turret flung skyward. Rockets smash into half-tracks and trucks. "Splash 2," yells Heller. "Jesus, they're everywhere." "Then keep firing till they're not." Flak bursts fill the air. One Thunderbolt takes a direct hit to the wing. Flames burst out, but the pilot keeps flying. "Still with you, Major." She's burning, but she ain't done on the ground. American infantry cheer from their foxholes as the jugs streak overhead. "Look at 'em go!" Private Hank Delaney yells. God bless those flyboys. Each pass leaves another tank destroyed, another convoy halted. By noon, the German advance begins to falter. Smoke rises over the woods. The Luftwaffe tries to counterattack and fails. Near Hofelai's P-47s destroy 8 German fighters without loss. "They fought like wolves protecting the herd," a ground observer writes. The Thunderbolt's toughness becomes legend. Pilots return with wings, shredded canopies, cracked engines, coughing, still flying. Lieutenant Tom Blakey lands his jug with 120 holes and half his tail missing. "Damn thing's indestructible," a mechanic mutters. Blakey grins. "Told you she's built like a church." God rides shotgun. In late December, the weather clears. Hundreds of Thunderbolts flood the skies, striking columns, bridges, and depots. The results are catastrophic for the Germans. Trucks burn by the thousands. Rail lines vanish. Tank crews abandon vehicles at the sight of jugs. A captured soldier confesses, "We feared the Thunderbolt more than artillery. You could hide from shells, not from the sky." Major Heller's group perfects new cab-rank tactics, loitering over the front and striking targets called in by ground observers. A tank commander radios jugs, "We're getting hammered. Can you help pop smoke blue?" "We're inbound," Heller replies. Minutes later, Thunderbolts swoop in rockets and gunfire, obliterating the German armor. The trapped Americans break out to safety. Later, the tank commander sends a message. "Next time you're on the ground, drinks are on me." By January 1945, the snow melts, revealing a graveyard of burned tanks, the work of the flying artillery. The Battle of the Bulge ends in Allied victory. Bastogne stands unbroken. The Thunderbolt proves itself the most feared warplane in Europe. General Omar Bradley writes, "Without the P-47, our forces might not have held. It was not just a fighter, it was the hammer of the battlefield." When Major Heller returns to England, his plane is scorched, patched with aluminum plates, gun barrels burned black. Mechanics beg to retire it. Heller just pats the cowling. "Not yet. She's got one more fight left in her." He's right. Ahead lies Germany, the last drive, the final storm, and the Jug, unstoppable as ever, will lead the charge to the Rhine. March 1945, Western Germany. The sky is alive with wings. Hundreds of Allied aircraft circle above a landscape of fire and ruin. Below, the Rhine River gleams like molten steel. On its western bank, Allied troops assemble for the final push. At 9,000 feet, Colonel Dave Schilling banks his P-47D Thunderbolt over the bridgehead near Remagen. "Wolfpack leader to all flights," he says. "We're cleared to hit anything east of the river that shoots, moves, or breathes." "Roger that," Wolfpack leader replies, Lieutenant Joe Powers. "Let's make it loud." The formation dives out of the clouds. Below, the Germans scramble. Flak erupts in black bursts, but the Thunderbolts keep coming. Their engines howl, guns blazing. Tracers rip through the fog, slamming into convoys and gun positions. Trucks explode in fireballs. Tanks vanish under rocket strikes. "Target down," Powers calls, moving to the next one. Behind them, engineers build pontoon bridges as infantry cross the Rhine. Overhead, the sky is owned utterly completely by the Thunderbolt. For every German gun that fires a Jug answers. At Remagen, soldiers cheer as the P-47s swoop low. "Hell of a sight," one shouts. When the Jugs are up, we walk tall. The Thunderbolt has become the guardian angel of the front, a thunderclap of vengeance arriving with terrifying precision. As the Allies cross the Rhine, the 9th Air Force hunts the remnants of the Wehrmacht across roads and rail lines. They strike convoys, trains, tanks, even horse-drawn carts. One squadron destroys 91 vehicles in a single afternoon. Another Jug returns with 600 bullet holes and lands safely. "Guess they're made of tank steel," the crews joke. By March 23rd, the Allies launch Operation Varsity, the airborne assault across the Rhine. Thousands of paratroopers descend. At dawn, the sky blooms with parachutes. P-47s hammer flak positions on the ground. "It looks like the world's falling," Schilling says. Wolfpack leader bandits at 2 o'clock, FW-190s low. Wolfpack lets clean the sky. The German fighters dive to attack. The sky turns to chaos, contrails, tracers, and fire. But the Jug's guns roar louder. "Splash 1," Powers calls. 2 down, Schilling chases another 190. To the trees, one burst, and it cartwheels into the forest. He pulls up, heart hammering. That's it. The skies are ours. From the ground, paratroopers watch Thunderbolts streak past their rocket trails, slicing the dawn. Gods of Thunder, one writes. The sky was full of them, silver planes roaring like gods of thunder. Wherever they flew, the enemy vanished. The Thunderbolts strike deep into Germany, destroying bridges, rail yards, and convoys. German morale collapses. Civilians flee at the mere sight of P-47 silhouettes overhead. One captured officer admits, "When we saw the fat fighter, we knew it was over." On March 25th, Schilling's Wolfpack attacks Verneuchen Air Base, one of the last operational Luftwaffe strongholds. Flak fills the air. Take the runway and work outward, Schilling orders. The first pass annihilates the parked aircraft. FW-190s and Me-262s erupt in fire. On the second pass, they hit fuel depots. The explosions light the horizon like sunrise. Schilling pulls up through the smoke. That's one less airfield to worry about. 30,000 rounds fired, not one jug lost. By April 1945, Germany is collapsing. The Thunderbolts patrol unopposed. The Luftwaffe exists only in wreckage. But the pilots know the fighting isn't over. There are still missions to fly convoys, to strike prisoners to rescue, and lives to lose. They take comfort in one thing: wherever the war goes, the jug goes too. When the Thunderbolts fly, the enemy dies. When they don't, the enemy breathes. The next mission will take them deeper still, to the last desperate resistance of the Reich. April 9, 1945, near Magdeburg, Germany. The war is nearly over, but no one in the 56th Fighter Group believes it. Not while the radios still scream with flak warnings. Not while the horizon still burns red. Colonel Hub Zemke sits in his new P-47M Thunderbolt, its dark blue skin gleaming in the pale spring sun. The jug has evolved faster, leaner, deadlier. Built to chase Germany's last weapon, the jet-powered Me-262. Wolf leader to all flights, Zemke radios. Reports of jets near Dessau. Let's see if the rumors are true. Roger that, replies Lieutenant Bob Johnson. If they're out there, let's teach them who owns the sky. The squadron climbs contrails, trailing like ghosts. Below stretch the ruins of Germany, burned cities and broken roads. Minutes later, control to Wolfpack bogies at Angels 30 moving west, fast, likely jets. Zemke spots silver flashes streaking across the sky. Me-262s, Johnson breathes. Damn, they're fast. The jets roar past, twin trails of fire behind them. For a moment they vanish. Zemke knows their weakness: landing speed. Wolfpack vector to their airfield. We'll hit them where they breathe. 5 minutes later, the Thunderbolts descend through cloud over farmland east of Dessau. Below the airfield, guns hot, Zemke orders. 8 jugs dive from the sun. The first jet explodes in midair. Another bursts into flame on the runway. Flak erupts too late. The P-47s tear through the base rockets and bombs, turning hangars into fireballs. Johnson pulls up, smoke trailing. Hell of a show, Hub. Zemke exhales. They wanted fast. They got dead. Recon photos later show the base reduced to rubble, 9 jets destroyed on the ground, 3 more in the air. It's the last major Luftwaffe base east of the Elbe gone. The German Air Force ceases to exist as a fighting force. The few Me-262s left are crippled by fuel shortages. Their young pilots fly once, maybe twice, before dying in flames. The next morning, Lieutenant Paul Conger flies his 83rd mission. Think they'll surrender soon, he asks. Zemke answers, maybe. But until they do, we keep flying. Because the jugs are still needed for more than war. They search for POW columns, rescue paratroopers, and deliver aid to stranded soldiers. The jug becomes both weapon and messenger. April 16th, the 362nd escorts B-26s over Magdeburg. Flak fills the sky. 1 P-47 takes a hit. The pilot never opens his chute. Wolfpack stay focused. We finish this, Zemke says. They flatten the rail yards. By nightfall, Germany's last supply lines are gone. Berlin is burning. The Red Army closes in. To the west, the Americans move toward the Elbe. The sky belongs to the Thunderbolt. No more dogfights, just silence after the storm. Yet still the engines keep turning. April 25, 1945, near Torgau. American and Soviet forces meet at last. Zemke's Wolfpack patrols overhead. From above, Zemke sees soldiers waving flags across a broken bridge. That's it, he says quietly. The war's ending. Guess we're out of a job, Colonel, someone jokes. Zemke replies, the best kind of unemployment there is. In the days that follow, the jugs fly mercy missions, dropping food to POWs, escorting transports, mapping Europe's ruins. But even in peace, the Thunderbolt still growls impatient at idling. She doesn't like standing still, a mechanic says. On May 8, 1945, Germany surrenders. Across airfields, P-47s stand in rows, mud-caked, oil-streaked, their fuselages scarred. The men walk among them quietly. Some touch the bullet holes. Others sit on the wings and stare at the empty sky. Then someone starts an engine. The deep thunder of the R-2800 fills the air, one last roar for the plane that never gave up. The Luftwaffe is gone. The Reich has fallen. And the flying tank now stands as the machine that helped end the war in Europe. But the Jug's story isn't over. Across the Pacific, another storm still rages, and the Thunderbolt's final missions await under the sun of Okinawa. May 1945. Ieshima, Okinawa. The island smells of salt and cordite. Smoke drifts over coral airstrips under the relentless sun. Rows of P-47N Thunderbolts, gleaming silver, sit ready for launch, the ultimate evolution of the flying tank. Captain Jack England climbs into his Jug. On the cowling, no guts, no glory. His crew chief salutes. "She's mean today, sir." England nods. "Good. We're hunting barges." Engines roar to life, each one a thunderclap over the Pacific. The target, Amami Oshima, a small island north of Okinawa. Japanese convoys still move under cover of night. Devil Flight check in. 2 up, 3 up, 4 up. They climb into the morning haze. Bogey alert bearing 120 low. 3 dots rise from the horizon. Japanese Ki-84 Hayate fighters. Devil Flight, tighten it up. Let's dance. The Ki-84s attack, cannons flashing. The Jugs bank and roll through the chaos. England dives. At 450 mph, he fires. Tracers rip through a Hayate's wing. It bursts into flame. Splash 1. Devil 2, where's your tail? On him, got 1 smoking. Another enemy breaks away, trailing smoke. Let him run, England says. 20 minutes later, they reach the coast. Below, a harbor full of ships. Guns hot take the pier. Bombs and rockets rain down. Fuel tanks erupt, ships explode. The sky turns black with smoke. Direct hit. Devil 3, your right wing's hit. Still flying, she's holding. The pilot brings the damaged Jug home safely. By June, the 318th and 413th Fighter Groups rule the Ryukyu Islands. They strike daily airfields, depots, trains, convoys. With new long-range wings, they reach Kyushu, once untouchable. The iron anvils of the Pacific, General Kenny calls them. Their job isn't glamour, it's annihilation. They torch warehouses and flatten Japan's war machine without mercy. June 15th. Okinawa. A typhoon rolls in. England's crew chains down planes against the storm. Think we'll go home soon, sir? Not yet, England replies. They're still talking invasion. The mechanic sighs. Then I hope those Jugs go first. When the weather clears, they launch again, armed with napalm. England releases his payload over Kyushu. The valley below ignites in sheets of fire. Target neutralized, he radios. Only static answers. By late July, Japan is broken. The airfields are empty, the pilots gone. The Thunderbolts still fly. On one mission, they intercept kamikazes heading for Okinawa. 4 suicide planes explode mid-air. War's dying hard, someone says. Wars always do, England answers. Then on August 6th, Hiroshima. 1 city gone. 2 days later, Nagasaki. Japan surrenders. The airfield at Ieshima falls silent. England sits in his cockpit engine, idling, canopy open. For the first time in years, there's no radio chatter, no flak, no scramble, just wind and the hum of cooling engines. He removes his helmet and looks at the sky. Guess we did it, he says softly. Yeah, Corwin replies. Guess the thunder's over. But the Jug feels eternal, from France to Burma, Normandy to Okinawa. It's more than steel and fire. It's survival. And in that fading Pacific light, the flying tank rests at last, undefeated, unbroken, unforgettable. The war is over. the world breathes again. But the Thunderbolt's legend, like its name, will echo long after peace returns to the skies. August 1945. Clark Field, the Philippines. Rows of Republic P-47 Thunderbolts sit silent under a blistering tropical sun. The war is done, and the sound that once shook the world has faded into memory. But to those who flew her, the Jug is a brother, a shield, a memory forged in fire. Mechanics drain the fuel tanks. Pilots sign decommissioning forms. Names are crossed off England, Heller, Schilling, Zemke. Some men head home. Others join new jet units forming across the Pacific. Zemke walks the line one last time. He runs a gloved hand along a P-47M's riveted skin. She gave us everything, he says. We asked for strength, and she never said no. He pauses. Let's make sure they rest easy. Across the world, in hangars and depots, the same ritual unfolds. In England, mechanics roll the last jugs into storage. In France, P-47s are handed to the French Air Force to fly for years to come. In Italy, the Brazilian Santa Apua squadron paints new markings on their surviving Thunderbolts, proud to have flown beside the Americans. To nations rebuilding from ashes, the Jug becomes a symbol proof that resilience and willpower can overcome any storm. Back in the U.S. Republic, Aviation's factory floor is quiet. The same floor that once thundered with life now echoes with silence. Engineer Alexander Kartveli walks among unfinished fuselages. On his clipboard, he sketches a jet XP-84 Thunderjet. Beneath it, 2 words for the Jug. The pilots return home, trying to fit into a world that feels too quiet. Some go back to farms, others to factories, but all remember the Jug. Gabreski calls it the plane that taught me to trust the sky. Schilling calls it my armor made of air. Johnson says she was ugly but beautiful to us. At reunions years later, the men still argue over climb rates and nose art. But when someone says P-47, they fall silent and nod. In Europe, farmers plow fields littered with spent shells. Children play near craters where Jugs once struck unaware they were saved by thunder. In Normandy, old men still look up when storms roll in. Les tonnerres, they whisper the thunders. In Bastogne, a monument stands to the pilots of the P-47 Thunderbolt, whose courage broke the storm. The numbers tell one story: 15,683, built over 500,000 sorties, 7,000 air victories. But numbers miss the soul of it. It wasn't the fastest. It wasn't the prettiest. But it was the one that came home. In 1949, the last Jugs leave U.S. service. Some go to Latin America, Mexico, Venezuela, Peru, flying proudly into the 1950s. Others are scrapped, their metal melted down into bridges, cars, even kitchen appliances. Yet a few survive intact. One stands in Dayton, Ohio. Another gleams at Duxford. If you listen closely, you can still smell the faint tang of oil and ozone, a ghost of thunder. Years later, Zemke is asked, what made the Thunderbolt special? He thinks for a long moment. It wasn't just steel, he says. It was stubbornness. Every man who refused to quit, and every plane that refused to fall. That's what thunder really is. The world changes. Jets replace pistons. Wars evolve. But the Jug's legend endures. In museums and air shows, the flying tank still rumbles through history. Sometimes on summer afternoons, a radial engine fires up. That deep rolling growl echoes again, not of destruction, but of survival. Of men and machines that stood between darkness and dawn. That sound was thunder, and its name was the P-47 Thunderbolt.